Rainbow Dash wants a hug from Applejack. By FireRain, aka me. Finally, another hard day of work over with, Applejack said as she finished bucking a tree, wiping her sweaty brow as she watched the delectable fruits of her labour drop into a nearby basket, varying in rainbows of colour. Now maybe we can get some pies ready for the market stall tomorrow, she said, tipping her Stetson back over her head. Her hooves were covered in bark scraps and her orange coat was matted with dirt, a mix of leaves and broken twigs entangled in her fur and mane, a reward that was received with each buck she delivered to each individual tree in her family's orchard. "Best haul this to the barn for later," she said, bending down to retrieve the handle of the basket between her strong teeth, dragging it with ease. Since the day Applejack began working the farm, she was far from the pony that she is today. As an amateur, she was just a wet noodle, hardly capable of knocking a leaf from a tree, let alone an apple. Despite the hardships time has bestowed upon her, she has always prevailed and grown stronger, eventually morphing into the very mare she is today. Her father always said that she was his strong little girl, and she always did him proud. He was not wrong, and even Granny Smith, her grandmother, agreed. Her big brother, Big Macintosh, would fight her on the argument, which led to endless challenges as the two siblings worked the fields together to provide for the family, determined to prove who the strongest apple is. Reaching the barn located off a short few minutes off dragging from the orchard, Applejack released a bucket of freshly harvested apples, the bucket landing with a suppressed pomp, cushioned by the many layers of carefully organised hay and straw. "Hello, AJ," a voice called out from somewhere within the barn, right as Applejack was about to turn and leave to return home. She turned around with a startle, a gasp escaping her cool lips as she scanned around the room for the source of the voice. Eventually, she looked over to the back of the room, off to where a pile of hay bales was stacked neatly into a small mountain. "I've been waiting for you." There, leaning against the bales of hay and wearing a smile, was her friend, Rainbow Dash. She was stood on her hind legs, an elbow resting on top of the hay bale, the other posed sassily at her side. She blew her mane out of her face so she could better face her farm pony friend. Applejack raised a brow at her, both suspicious and annoyed at her sudden appearance. Not that she wasn't happy to see a friend, of course. Yet when it was Rainbow, she knew anything could transpire, and not in a good way. "You scared the jiminies out of me, Sugar Cube. Why you're all hiding out in my barn?" she asked, approaching a prison-maned Pegasus, her eyes locked onto her the same way a bull looks at a red flag. "I just thought I'd drop by and say hi," she replied innocently, allowing herself to drop from her leaning position to stand on all four of her hind hooves. She levelled her eyes with Applejack and looked deeply within her emeralds. "Hi," she said, waving her hoof with a small mischievous smile. Applejack frowned, unamused at her antics. "Very funny, Rainbow," she said, pushing her hoof down with a light shove. "Now, what do y'all need? I gotta go back and help Granny Smith prepare dinner," she said, clearly not in the mood for any pranks or gimmicks. Rainbow rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, AJ. I came because I wanted to ask you a question," she said simply, bringing her face close to her friend's, to the point she could feel and smell her minty breath. Applejack's unamused glare dropped in an instant, replaced by confusion. "That's it? A question?" she said, somewhat not believing the Pegasus. "Well, shoot. What's this question of yours?" "Well," Rainbow began, tapping the hair front hooves together, looking at the ground. "It's a really big question," she said, bringing her eyes to meet Applejack's and inching her muzzle closer with each word. "Go on," the farm pony ushered, rolling her hoof eagerly. "Like, so big that it's enormous." "Yes." "As in, you couldn't fit it in a 1,000,000 page book?" "Nah, I find that incredibly hard to believe, but go on." "And even if you tried to fit it in a book, you wouldn't deliver it correctly?" "Oh, consarn it, girl, what?" Applejack said loudly, her tone irritated, pushing Rainbow Dash's face away, removing her from her personal space. "Just out of it already. Shoot!" Rainbow stared at her for a while, absorbing her body language and her face of agitated heat, her cheeks warm and glowing with a tinge of pinkish red. Oh, those adorable little cheeks with their white freckles. Rainbow could almost not contain herself from reaching out to squeeze them, but she pulled back her mental leash. Eventually, she smiled and said, I want a hug. The room fell silent for what seemed like hours, the duo of best friends entering a staring contest. Applejack with small, frozen eyes, and Rainbow with a simple, warm and friendly smile, acting as if this was normal. Applejack shook her head. Real shucks, that's all you wanted to ask? A hug? Yup, Rainbow replied, imitating her big brother and opening her hooves up. AJ rolled her eyes and complied, wrapping her hooves around her friend and accepting the embrace request. She couldn't understand why, but she humored her anyway. Rainbow Dash felt herself blush as she pressed her cheek into Applejack's, absorbing the utterly adorable plush chubbiness and warmth. Oh, how she's wanted to do this. She's dreamed of it. She's longed for it. She needed it. She had it. The mare of her dreams encased in her hooves. She smiled in triumph, mentally pumping the air with a victorious hoof. Thank you, Celestia, she whispered to herself, hardly containing her blush.